Continue to get reaction to this verdict now with the director at the Teddy Bear Clinic, Dr. Shaheda Omar. Dr. Omar, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. Can you just tell us what the Teddy Bear's reaction is to this judgment that has been handed down to these three suspects?
So firstly, the Teddy Bear Foundation is expressing a huge relief that they were found guilty. However, like you said, it's a bitter pill to swallow because there are so many questions unanswered, lack of closure around the whereabouts of Joshlin Smith. I think we hear that they were charged and found guilty for kidnapping and child trafficking. We as the Teddy Bear Foundation are not optimistic about the life of Joshlin Smith. We do believe that she has been murdered. Unfortunately, this is a bitter pill to swallow, but we have to accept that the Justice Erasmus and the prosecution team, and including law enforcement, worked very hard. Justice Erasmus, one can see that interrogated, there was a lot of rigor demonstration in view of the process of the state witness who was initially an accused as well. The reliability, the credibility, the inconsistencies, the discrepancies. Despite that, I think the judge came back with a very sound response, which convicted the accused who are now found guilty. So we are relieved. However, we still want questions to be answered, but also in response to the police commissioner. Yes, it is a whole of society approach, collaboration, coordination, and integration, but we also need this to be rolled out across the country so that there are so many other Joshlin Smiths who have not been accounted for, who have not reached this position in their lives where there's been a verdict found. So that is something that we still hold on to and want to hold people accountable for responding adequately, appropriately, and timelessly.
Dr. Omar, excuse me, you expressed that the Teddy Bear Foundation doesn't believe that Joshlin could possibly be found alive. Is this based on your experience in terms of the many cases that the foundation works on with regards to the disappearance of children?
Indeed, I think if we just look at the reaction, the lack of emotion, the mother's emotions being so blunted, not showing regret, not showing remorse, and the reality is that the mother had ample opportunity. If her daughter was still alive and she was handed over to somebody in exchange of the money, the responses would have been different. But the reality is that the mother at the back of her head, behind everything, knew that her daughter is no longer alive. And therefore, if we just look at cases that we've dealt with, that often there is some kind of regret or remorse, and there is disclosures that come forth, where there's regret and to say this has happened. So unfortunately, the notion and the belief that we have is that Joshlin Smith is no more. We understand the police commissioner and his teams are going to continue with that interrogation and investigation. And we salute that, but we also have an expectation that they reach out, that nationwide, the other Joshlin Smiths are found to be in the same situation where there is further investigation conducted.
I mean, the Western Cape Police Commissioner spoke about the different resources that had been deployed in trying to find Joshlin. I mean, 150 detectives, bringing in the army as well as the SA Navy. And he does say that all these incidents come with lessons. How differently do you believe stakeholders, not just the police, could have acted in the early days of this incident that could have given a different result?
So, Katlego, we've had this discussion before, and I do believe, and I said this yesterday, I said, whose fault, who's to be blamed here? It's nobody's fault, nobody's to be blamed, and it's everybody's fault, and everybody's to be blamed. I think just looking at what the police commissioner alluded to about each block, each neighborhood, each community, where there needs to be this police forum, not police forums, community forums, looking out for the well-being and protection of children. So this is a whole of society approach. It has to be a collective effort where everybody becomes vigilant in the safeguarding and protection of children. Until we don't have that kind of scenario, we are not going to be able to rid the nation of this scourge of violence against children.
And I think what's also very important, Dr. Omar, is just bringing it back to the home. I mean, Judge Erasmus spoke about how a village raises a child and how it's important as a community for us to be able to look after our children. But in this particular case, this child was endangered within the home.
Indeed. I mean, it was clearly evident that this child and her siblings were at risk. They were children in need of care. And unfortunately, family members, child welfare, social development, I think there were so many other accountable figures who did not fulfill their mandate for whatever reasons, undercapacitation, lack of resources, lack of skills. Unfortunately, the reality panned itself out in the fact that this child then disappeared and is no longer to be found. And this is something that needs to be addressed urgently, where people have to be held accountable. It is a systemic challenge where resources have to be allocated to these different organizations and bodies in order to ensure the safety of children, to ensure that they are in a position to fulfill their mandates effectively and efficiently.
So, Dr. Omar, when the Judge Erasmus was reminding us that the contravention of Section 4.1 Act of Human Trafficking has a prescribed sentence of a life imprisonment, what type of sentencing do you believe would serve as a precedent to deter parents from using children as such a commodity?
So no life sentence is enough, Katlego. A child has disappeared. The child is no longer. And we know many other children are potential victims. And is this going to deter other people? Yes, we do believe that it's important that more stringent sentencing, where there's no opportunity for parole as well on good behavior. There must just be no opportunity where the perpetrators have been let off the hook.
All right, Dr. Omar, thank you so much for your time and for just giving us these insights this afternoon as Judge Nathan Erasmus has handed down judgment on all three, Smith, Van Ryn, as well as Apollos, for being guilty of kidnapping and human trafficking.